Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real. I'm Shannon. I'm your host. And today I have with me Kat Dunkle. She is the author of, I'm going to read it, Is It Safe to Die? A Memoir of Death to Life, Second Chances, and Redemption. Now, I am almost finished with this book myself, and I was just telling her before the break that I was sitting there reading her story and going, oh no, like I had these real reactions to your story. So, first of all, I just want to thank you for being here and sharing your time and energy with me and my audience.
Thank you, Shannon. I love meeting new people, and doing this is a great way to do it. I've had the opportunity to speak to so many hurting people, I think, that went through similar situations or are in them now. And so this is a great opportunity.
I appreciate that. I know that you do a lot of speaking and you're a writer, you're a speaker, you're also a businesswoman, but you have such, I'll tell you what really struck me about your near-death experience story, because I do interview a lot of people, and some are out of body, some are shared death. There are all sorts of perspectives on this.
Right.
It really touched me and resonated with me that you were an atheist. I was too, for the most part, during certain times of my life,
Yeah.
not at all anymore. And I really find the transformation so compelling, especially given all of the trauma that you've been through and all of the loss and the grief. So I'd love to start by getting to know you and a little. I, of course, have read your book, so I know a lot of it. But if you could share with our listeners about you and how your life started, how
Mhm.
these sort of spiritual beliefs or lack thereof formed as a result of your formative experiences.
Okay. Well, yeah, there was a lack of actually in my in growing up. My parents were both alcoholics, and my dad was an angry man. They never. I don't know how they ever got married, but my dad had a sixth grade education, quit school to go into the Navy to support his mother, who was widowed. And my mom was a college graduate, for only woman at Oregon State University to graduate from pharmacy school back in the 30s. So, I mean, total opposites. And I think my dad always kind of, felt inferior to my mom, and he was mean. He drank a lot. When he got drunk, he was not nice. So we kind of hid from him. We weren't allowed to. We weren't allowed to eat too loud, or to laugh too loud, or to run through the house, or to be kids. And so that was kind of my growing up. Church and God, or life, or that, as far as that went, just wasn't anything I was exposed to. I always felt like I wanted to be. I wanted to be where the kids were that knew about God or knew about things. And but I just, was never got to church or anything like that. So, and into my teen years, I started doubting the fact that there could be a God, and actually became an agnostic, because I went everywhere I could even imagine to trying asking people to tell me, something to believe in. I mean, I was ripe to be any type of cult or anything, because anybody that could have made any sense to me, I would have followed in a heartbeat, but nobody did. And I tried every church, every religion, everything. Nothing resonated with me. So I would say I was an agnostic at that point, because I wanted to believe there, but there just was nothing to help me do that. So into my teen years, I started questioning, that. And then later on in life, I had a terrible time in my life. My childhood was miserable, like I said, but I became very, very I don't know, I was insecure because my father also was transferred all over the country. And so every 2 years we moved to a new city and I go to a new school. And I don't know if you ever had to walk into a classroom with new kids, but it's terrifying. They're all looking at you, and kids don't like that. So, and I certainly didn't, but I was insecure, afraid, all those things. And in high school, we had moved to Kansas City, which was from Washington State. And so these kids all talked funny too, would say things like y'all. And, so I was I stuck out because here I was from the West Coast, and that, the Beach Boys were coming around in that time. And do you know who the Beach Boys are?
Oh,
You're so young.
absolutely. No, no, I'm not as young as I look, but yes, of course, I know who the Beach Boys are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just really kind of stuck out, and I married to get away from home. I did not love this man. He was an alcoholic like my parents, and had 2 children and a nervous breakdown by the time I was 21 years old. So I took my kids and I got in an old beat up car in Kansas City. And right before I left, I looked up at the sky and I said, God, if you're really up there, if you just give me 1 year to know what it was like to feel love or to love somebody, fine, you can devastate me, kill me, do what you want to do, but just 1 year, that's all I ask. Well, later on, I threw the kids in the car. We went to back to Washington State and Seattle, and I got a good job, and we're in government housing, the 2 boys and I, and we could run through the house and play because we didn't have any furniture. We slept on the floor. It was a little gas stove that heated our unit, and we pretend like the little pilot light was a fire, and we were camping. So the kids loved it. I mean, the boys loved it. They didn't have to break anything, so they could play games in the house and run. And we'd go down by the lake and feed the ducks, go to the library, read books, and so life is actually fun for me then. I had a good life then. And then I got a good job, and there was a lady there that came in one day and told me that she'd found the man I was going to marry. And I thought, oh my God, that's not anything. I don't want to go there for sure. And she had this guy call me. His name was Don. And 28 days after that phone call, we were married. it was, I found true love. I did, because I think after we saw each other almost every day, I was looking across the table at him this one day, and I was just afraid. I was so fearful because I felt this feeling I had never felt in my life. I loved this man more than life itself. I mean, he was handsome, he was kind, he owned his own home, he owned a nice car. I mean, he had a good job. He was not an alcoholic. He was like smart. I thought, what does he see in me? What would he ever want with me? Anyway, on the 28th day, we were sitting there, and this guy came in that Don worked with, and he was drunk. He could hardly stand up, and he's leaning over the table, and he says, you 2 kids belong together. He said, what would it take for you to get married? And Don said, if I had $200, we'd go to Reno and get married tonight. And I went, oh my God, can he really be saying this? I knew I loved him, but how to think that he could possibly love me was just beyond anything I could imagine. And I looked at him, he looked at me. This guy said, I'm going to write you a check right now. He pulled out and said he didn't have any checks. He had to go home. So we're laughing, we're thinking he's never going to come back. He's going to go home. His wife's going to kill him, and he's going to pass out or whatever, and he'll never be back. And it was about a few minutes later, here he comes back with his checkbook, wrote the check that you couldn't even read. And Don looked at me, and I looked at him, and we went, let's go. So we did. And we got 2 traffic tickets before we got out of the state. Anyway, we got married. It had been, just incredible. I just, I would open closets, and there would be crystal and china in there that he'd got when he was in the Navy that he collected. And this beautiful home, and my boys had a daddy, and it was life could not have been better. And about 6 months into this marriage, Don had the opportunity to buy a tavern with a friend of his. And I, of course, I didn't want that because of alcohol in my past. Didn't want anything to do with that, but it was his dream to own his own business. And so I couldn't stand in his way, and he did. And So I didn't like it, but on our first anniversary, we went out to this great dinner, and he said, can we just stop by the tavern and see how things are going? Because it was all new. And I said, sure. So we go there, and everybody's crowding around him and congratulating him. And this barmaid was just so openly flirting with him. It was just like, Dawn, can't you see what she's doing? And she's flicking her hair towards him. And, this is going on. I'm sitting there getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And so pretty soon I looked up, and he was fixing her necklace on the, and I lost it. I just got up and took off running out of the tavern and left my coat. And it's in February, cold and rainy, and I'm running down the street, just kind of running away from everything that I could. And it was this awful. And this guy stops by, and he says, "Lady, can I help you out here?" And I said, sure. And I hopped in the car with a total stranger, not even knowing who he was or anything. And I just, driving around, and I'm crying, and pretty soon I stopped crying, and he says, would you like to go home now? And I said, yes. And he took me home, and I walked up by the door, and Don was furious. So we had our very first really big fight, and it had been exactly 1 year, just like what I had prayed back in Kansas that night. Just give me 1 year and you can just devastate me. Well, after that, things started sliding. I didn't trust Dawn to go to work because of that barmaid, and I was doubting myself. I was like, and I was eating too much and gaining weight, and my hair was cut too short, and I was like, it just kind of, things just started sliding, and we started picking at each other more, which we'd never done before. So I didn't work at the tavern, didn't want to have anything to do with it. But on Monday nights, we had this promotion, and I would work that one night. And so it was April 6th, and I kissed the boys goodbye and walked out the door and went into the tavern. And when I got there and walked in, Don was leaning over the counter, talking intensely on the phone. And I couldn't imagine, because it was packed with people there. And he hung up the phone, and came over and grabbed my arm and was pulling me out the door, saying things that just didn't seem real, that my son Mark had been hit by a car. And we went to the hospital, and got there just as the ambulance pulled in, and they pulled his little limp body out of the car, or out of the ambulance. And the doctor came running out screaming, how'd this happen? How'd this happen? And I don't know. And so we were led into a waiting room, and hour after hour, waited, and we could see Mark through a glass partition thing. And they came out and asked me to call a priest. Well, I said, I don't want a priest to come in there. I want you to save my son. I don't want any priest in there. What is he going to do? And so they just ignored me and called a priest, and he walks by me into the door, and they shut the door on me and let the priest in. And I'm like crazy, I'm yelling at him, leave my son alone, leave him alone. And anyway, that all happened. And through the night, we're waiting and just praying, doing, I don't know how to pray even, but I didn't know what to do. I think we were just absolutely frozen. I wasn't praying, I'll put it that way, because I didn't know how to, but I didn't know what to do. And we walked down the hallway, and I was looking out the window, and the sun was coming up, and cars are going by, and it's like a normal day for people. And I'm thinking to myself, how can this be normal? Don't they know that somebody's child's in here dying, and other babies are being born, and life is going on? How can that happen? And I heard footsteps behind me, and a doctor came down in the hallway, and he told us that they weren't able to save Mark. And I just collapsed, and we went into his room, and I felt like he was cold, and I pulled the covers up over him and leaned down to kiss him, and he had a tear in his eye. And I said, don't cry, Mark, because mommy's here. Just like I can make everything fine. I'm mommy. I can make everything fine, Mark. You're going to be okay. And I just collapsed, and I don't remember much after that. But we did go home, and Chris my other son was there, and he was with Mark when Mark got hit by the car. They had a babysitter, but she hadn't neglected to watch them like she should. And Chris didn't know what had happened when Mark got hit by the car. All the attention went to Mark, and Chris was left standing there. this poor kid, like 9 years old, and not quite 9 years old. And so he wanted to walk home and tell the babysitter what happened. I just can't even imagine what he went through. And so I just held him and told him the doctors weren't able to save Marky, Chris, and he just started to scream and cry and into his room and close us out. So life then I closed down. I was in our house. I wouldn't go out of the house. I can't do the name for it when you don't leave your house, but I couldn't face people. I had this horrible guilt inside of me that kids aren't supposed to die before their moms, and I couldn't talk to people. I didn't want anybody around. These two ladies from a church nearby came by, and they told me my son, was with Jesus now. And I just shook them. I said, "You're Jesus. I'll tell you about your Jesus. He kills little children," and slammed the door in their faces. So I was angry. And at that point, I would say I was definitely an atheist, because I just there was no way. If God did exist, I hated him. I hated him for what he allowed to happen. So my whole life then was anything far from any belief in anything. You live this life and you die and that's it. But life did go on, and it was awful. And it was not long after that Don said, "You've got to get out of the house. We're going to go out tonight." And I didn't want to, and I argued with him, but we started out the house, and I was arguing back and forth with him, and we got in the car, and it became more intense. The arguing did, and more intense and more intense. And we're driving down the street. I'm just screaming at him, and he's screaming at me. And he said, "Kathy, you have to move on." And I came across a seat with my arms are just flailing away at him, and he's trying to drive the car, pull it over, and he goes like this at me and hit me in the side of the back. And when he did, you have a sac around your liver, and that, I guess it's like a balloon, and it holds your liver together, and it exploded, and I just caused massive internal bleeding in me. And I did just fell over to my side of the car. I didn't know anything was wrong with me at that time, but I said, "Just take me home," which he did. And I got the car keys and took off like I always did. I was going to run away from him, run away from life and whatever. So I wheeled out of the driveway, and I'm driving down the freeway, and I'm feeling this horrible pain inside of me. And I pulled over, and cars are going by and splashing water on me. It's raining, and I'm drenched, and I'm undoing my clothes. And I thought I'd have to get back home. So I slid back behind the wheel of the car, and I don't know how I got home, but by the time I'm trying to crawl up, halfway crawling up the driveway, and my clothes are all undone and rain drenched, and Don's standing there just furious with me. And I tried to get by him to call an ambulance, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I've got to get to the hospital. Something's drastically wrong with me." He said, "Well, I'll take you to the hospital if you're that bad." And he did. So they didn't have MRIs or CAT scans at that time. We're talking back in the 60s, so they didn't really know. What they knew, my blood count was dropping drastically, my blood pressure, everything gone. And so they came in and said I had to go into surgery right away. And I was scared. I thought, I don't want to go to surgery. Who are you guys? I don't know who these doctors are. And so they took me into surgery down the hall, and we went. I'm looking at the tiles going by, and they stopped, and Don was there, and he leaned over and he kissed me, and he said, "I love you." And I was shocked, because I didn't think he even liked me, let alone love me. And so I held that thought and went into the surgery, and the surgeons were all there, all masked strangers over me, and they put the mask over my face, and I knew that I should go under, that I shouldn't know what's going on. And everything went black, and I stopped hearing the noise of the surgery room, but I was still conscious. I knew what was going on. I knew where I was and what was happening. And then I couldn't breathe, and I was just absolutely drowsy, trying to breathe, like I had gone underwater or something, and I couldn't get the breath to come in. And I was panicked. I was just panicked all over, and I felt myself kind of going through something, a wall or something, and into a tunnel. And and all of a sudden I realized I didn't have to breathe, and I was still frightened, but I was felt okay. And this thought was kind of strange. This is really weird. And I started moving forward through this hallway, and I saw Don, my husband, down below me, and my son Chris, and they were crying. And I no, don't cry. I'm alive. Everything's fine. Something's happening, but I'm okay. I'm alive. And then I moved on, and I saw four people, humans in street clothes, standing off to my left. And they looked really worried, like they were concerned something was going to happen to me. And I know nothing was said, but I went by them and I thought, that's really strange. I mean, I didn't know these people. I didn't know I was dead at that time, I guess. And so I'm continuing down the hallway, and all of a sudden the thought comes to me, there is no God. And this horrendous noise, I mean, like standing next to a jet airplane, the jets of an airplane, it was just this horrendous noise, a freight train or something going through, like what I hear. And then I felt this rope burning through the middle of me. And I don't know what that was all about, but when it just stopped, and when that stopped, I knew that God did exist. I knew with everything in me that God existed. I mean, I can put my hand out in front of me, and you can say that's not your hand, but you're not going to convince me that's not my hand. I know it is, right? So I knew that God existed, and I was so excited because I had never known anything like this, and this absolute peace that passes any understanding that I had I felt something that I'd never felt before, this euphoria, this peace, this incredible, I don't know how to even explain it. I really can't. And even if I did, it probably wouldn't make sense. So, but I felt that. And then I heard the same noise come again, and I felt the rope burning through me. And I'm thinking that God was just burning out of me all of the hatred and the anger and the horrendous things that had happened to me in life out of me. I don't know if that's what it was all about, but then again it stopped, and I saw this brilliance, knowing that that was heaven and that I was going there. And I was so excited. And I thought about my husband, I thought about my sons, but I just, I was excited to go to heaven. I did not at that point ever want to go back to anything other than what I was headed towards. And then it was like the bottom dropped out, and you're sitting there now, and the floor drops out, and you fall just like you're in an elevator shaft, just falling into darkness. And I knew that I had fallen into hell. And I was falling into this darkness, but the incredible part about it was that I was separated. I was separated from God, from all that peace, all that incredible thing that had just happened. And I was almost as though God didn't even know I was there, that I didn't ever exist as far as anybody knew. I was going to fall and burn in this horrendous place forever and ever and ever. I couldn't commit suicide. I mean, these thoughts came to me. I can't kill myself. I'm going to endure this for eternity. I can't ever get out of this place. And I was screaming, of course, and I was screaming out for God that, please, God, please forgive me. I believe you. I believe in you now. And I believe everything. I just save me from this horrible, horrible place. But I knew that God didn't know I was there, but thankfully I was wrong. and then it just started going backwards again. I started going backwards into the tunnel again. And I was going back towards the entrance of where I started, and it stopped. And I heard a voice say, bring people to me. And I believe it was the voice of God. And then I felt my spirit enter back into my body. And then I came to life back into the surgery room. And so that was over 50 years ago. And from that day, I was screaming at everybody, God's real, God's real. And, as I started getting better, I mean, Shannon, I didn't know what a Bible was. It was a book. I knew that. I had never picked one up before. And how am I going to bring people to God? What am I going to do? I'm not even that well educated. I didn't have a college education, nothing. I couldn't, what am I going to do? Who am I? And as a matter of fact, I went to a church and tried to tell a priest about what had happened to me. He says, "Who are you? Who are you that God would do this to you?" I don't know. I'm here asking you, but so I just picked up a Bible one day and started reading it, and I started going to church, any church. I didn't care what denomination it was. I would go in and it happened to be a Catholic church, and I'm not Catholic, and I'm not even now, but that's where I ended up, and nobody was ever in there. They had mass at 6 o'clock every morning, but I was there every single day, 7 days a week. And then a friend told me about another church that taught it the Bible, and I thought, well, that's great. I need that. So I started going there on Wednesdays and Sundays, and still at the Catholic church every day. Anything I could grab onto to learn about God was just so, I mean, it just drew me like everything. And so I did learn, and I did move on. And then it was not too long after that, I had a dream, and I don't think I had special things happened to me, but I had this was a dream. And what happened to me in the near-death experience was not a dream. And that's proven fact through a neuroscientist that I am very close to, Dr. Bruce Grayson, who wrote a book called Alive. He's done a lot of research into near-death experiences for many, many years. And dreams are definitely different. Hallucinations are definitely different. And so is oxygen deprivation. It's definitely different. And I can explain all that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But I
He's
had this.
actually here in Charlotte. He's here in
Good.
Charlottesville, an hour from me. It's
Yeah.
Dr.
Who is he?
Grayson.
He
Dr.
does?
Grayson. Yeah, I believe so,
Oh,
right? Was it
yeah.
him?
Grayson, Bruce Grayson, the University
Yeah.
of Virginia.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
hour from here. I have it on my, didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
No, I'm glad you
sort of
did.
keep intending to meet him or connect with him somehow. So I know all about him. I think he's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just a dear friend, and as I'm in his book Alive on page 144, my case is. But anyway, I went to bed that night, had this dream about starting a business. And I had a high school education, barely that actually, because we were transferred all over, and sometimes I would go into a class, I'd have a whole new curriculum, and it was something I wasn't used to. So they tell me, well, just sit in class and we'll pass you on. So learning was what I could teach myself. And here I am with this dream of starting this business. Okay. I get up the next morning, I tell my husband about it, and he's going, yeah, well, okay. And I did. And that business turned into a multi-million-dollar corporation that is still there today, over 50 years. My son runs it now. I'm retired, and he took over the helm, and he's become very wealthy through it, and we've lived it. But that was a dream that I believe God gave me. I didn't have the expertise to do what I did, and I did it. And this business is called Customer Research Incorporated, and you can go online, and there's an about thing on their website, and it does tell my story of starting the business back in the 60s. And it had to do with customer satisfaction, which nobody had heard of in the 60s. There was no JD Powers, none in Nordstrom's, any of that. So the business became very successful. I believe that was a gift from God. I mean, one thing after another happened to me that was just I was not able to explain, and so that's my story.
Thank you
I
so
lived happily
much.
ever after. Don
Yeah,
and I are still married.
I love that too, that you and Don weathered the storm,
Yes.
because reading your book, you went through so much, and just how patient you were with the process, I think, together, and that you committed to growing together. I just, through your grief, I mean, like I said, I already knew that you had lost your son, but reading about it, and also being a childcare provider my whole life, and hearing what happened with the babysitter, and
Um,
I just went, oh no, this is terrible. And I just thought, I don't know how anyone anyone survives that. But the fact is, as you said, yes, you can persevere and you can push through, but I do believe also that there is that spiritual support of God, and that just I think some things I actually want to know that you're sorry, I'm stammering because I have so many questions floating around in my head, but I'd love to ask you, do you see everything that's happened in your life as having sort of been your soul's preordained story for your soul to grow and learn certain things? Or do you think that they were just things that happened
Mm,
and that led you down this path sort of by accident or by chance?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I never thought about that, but I guess I would have to say that's life. I think there are so many people that suffer horrible childhoods and a lot worse than mine in other countries where they're born into this poverty and starvation and horrible things happen to people. So yeah, I really think that's life. And I think we all have our burdens to carry in life. And I think it's those burdens a lot of times that are what makes us strong, that are
Yeah.
what makes us the people we are. And so I think it was all, I don't think our lives are preordained for us. I guess I'll put it that way. I think, we pretty much are at the helm to do what we do, to survive or not, and some are survivors and some aren't. And I think the survivors are maybe here to help the ones who aren't. I hope.
I
So
love that perspective. I also, when we were talking about, oh, the science of this, I was just talking with a friend last night who's had a out of body experience, and I said, he said it's as real as anything you can imagine. I said, well, that's the thing is that there are a lot of people that say, oh, it's a hallucination because your brain is running out of oxygen, and you
right,
address that in your book as well. But until you've lived it, and I haven't, but I know from speaking with so many people that have had this experience, when you're there, you said, it's as real as the hand in front of your face.
right.
It's not a hallucination. We've all been sick or hallucinated, and we've all dreamed at some point in our lives. It's a
Mhm.
very different feeling, I would imagine, because
Yeah,
most people that I know who've experienced what you have or similar describe it as being realer than this, that
yes.
this is the dream, and then you wake up.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd love to hear, it's not really a question, which is I tend to do this. I just sort of throw that out there and say, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I thought Dr. Grayson, because I asked him about that. That was actually the first thing I did was, ask my doctor, the surgeon who saved me actually, but could I have been hallucinating? And he said, no. He said, you were under you were under general anesthetic, and your brain cannot, it doesn't function. I can't think of the right word, but he had a doctor word for it. But no, I could not have been hallucinating. And Dr. Grayson also explains that in his book, that hallucinations are flashes of things, flashes of memories, or flashes of this, or flashes of light. You don't have a consistent pattern of a sequence things that happen. Like I went down the hallway, I learned about God, I learned about heaven, I fell into hell. Those are sequent things that happen. They weren't flashes of anything that I might have had in my brain. I
Right.
was never exposed to religion at all, and I didn't know anything about hell or heaven or God or anything. I mean, I knew all kids know that. I guess you are born knowing there's a God. I mean, I think the Bible says that all people know there is a God. So because people a lot of times say, well, what about somebody that's never heard about God, and they're living in primitive conditions or whatever? They're all men in their hearts know God exists in their soul, or whatever you want to say. So we all do. So it was not, that's the difference. My feeling in hallucinations is what the science says. I could not have been hallucinating. And oxygen deprivation, I said, maybe that was it. Well, no, oxygen deprivation is a whole other thing. So there's scientific facts that say that these near-death experiences actually happen to people, and they can't explain them. They can't. So they know that they aren't the things that we think that they are. The questions that we have, hallucinations, oxygen deprivation, crazy, whatever, those things, but they can answer that. So science has proven that these are the real deal. They happen to people.
Yeah, and just if you think about the thousands of people who've experienced this, sure, some of them might be lying, some of them might be
Yeah.
mentally ill, some of them might be hallucinating, but the majority of them have similarly themed near-death experiences. So if this were a hallucination, why are people not seeing a pink elephant and dancing in a carnival, and the next person sees a beach scene, and the next, while it seems very personalized towards
Mhm.
what the person needs to see, it's all the same, even whether you're
Right.
religious or not.
Right.
And some people don't. Some people see Jesus, some people don't. But the theme is there is something greater that we all come from, and you can call it,
Absolutely.
some people call it universe. Some people call it God. That source that we all come from. I was talking with my friend about this last night, saying it's like consciousness soup. Like God is everything. It's like God is everything we're made up of. And, this, like, it's all knowing, it's eternal, it's this beautiful, it's light, it's love, it's the consciousness that we're all, like you said, whether we know it or not, aware of. Um, and you can speak to that if you have thoughts about that. That's just how I interpreted it
Right.
or felt. That's just how what my
Right.
thoughts were on it. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are about what
Yeah.
is God, that what do you think?
Yeah. I definitely believe that there is, and again, call it what you want. There's God. I believe that this universe, this life we live, everything could not just have evolved. I don't believe that could possibly happen. I was open to that. But I don't discount people who can say they prove or whatever that that's the way it is. That's fine. But for me personally, I know that there is a supreme being that is in charge of all this. If not, we're complete chaos. I believe our spirit, at the time we're conceived, we are given a spirit, and that spirit stays with us until we die. This fleshly thing, thank God, it goes to the grave. And
Yeah.
who we really are is our spirit. Who's talking to you right now is my spirit, and my spirit will live on for eternity. And where it goes is that's up to, I don't know who that's up to. I don't know. I really don't know. But anyway, that's my belief, is my spirit will live on. And Dr. Grace, I think, calls it consciousness. It's our I don't know, our brain, whatever it is our spirit that lives on for eternity. So we are unique. Every one of us is a unique spirit that has been created. And yeah, that's my belief.
I love that. I think it's beautiful. And how would you say that, obviously you've shared a lot of it, but having had this experience, I'm trying to how has it changed the way that you go through life? I'm sure you continue to grieve. Um, Processing the grief, I'm sure it changes over time, and it's been a long time, but obviously it never leaves you. So I'd love to know, sort of, how does it inform the way that you move through the world? How does it inform your healing?
Yeah. My oldest son, Chris, who was with Mark when he was hit by the car, was recently interviewed on a podcast, and he was talking about what happened. And he said that when Mark was hit, that Mark was thrown up over the car and his shoes came off, and Chris was watching all of this, and then Mark was laying on his back in the street, and Chris ran out to him, and his eyes were open. And when Chris said that, I mean, I just almost fainted. I mean, my life just went out of me. I just, oh my God, and Chris, Marky, are you okay? Are you okay? And Mark didn't say anything. So I mean, I must have cried for 2 or 3 days over that incident. This has been a long, long time, and I was pretty sure I was pretty much over the grief of Mark. More of the things I think about Mark now are the wonderful time we had together, what a wonderful spirit he is. And I can hardly wait, because I believe that if you die through an abortion or whatever, that you will achieve your prime life, where you're in the prime of your life, which I would assume is between your late 20s and early 40s, somewhere, maybe your 30s. In the prime of your life, that's where God will keep you for eternity. And these wrinkled old bodies that we have, go away, and babies that have never had a chance to grow up. So I'm excited, so excited to see Mark. Like, who did he become? Who did he become?
Yeah.
Because he's a spirit just like me, and he became something, and I'm excited, and I'm excited for where he's at. Because I know that it seems like life 50, 60, 80 years, 90 years is an eternity, but it's not. It's a flash in the realm of eternity, and so I'm excited to see that. Now I even forgot what the question was, because
No, you answered it perfectly. It was just how
how
your
it changed
experience,
me.
how it changed you, and how it helps you,
Yeah,
or doesn't
yeah,
help you, or
yeah,
anything in relation to how you
yeah,
grieve and how you continue to heal. And I think you answered that really beautifully. Uh,
yeah.
I also would love to know what you think it is that we're doing here. Why are we here in
Why
these
are we here?
bodies? Yeah, in these bodies on this earth.
I don't know. The Bible says that God created this, and then if he knew what this was all going to become, there's a lot of questions I got to ask.
Yeah,
Why, if he knew that we would be falling into sin, that all men sin, fall short of the glory of God, and so, well, why would you even want to create us in the first place? And I don't know. I really don't know that answer to that question, but I love people, and I can see why God would love a lot of people, and I can see why some people maybe would not make it to heaven. But and that's another question that I wondered about. you know is it safe to die? The name of my book. I think it is for most people. I know I'm not special. I know that God wouldn't give me a gift that he wouldn't give anybody else. So I think everybody in the dying process, as they're dying, has the opportunity to either follow a third of the angels of heaven and Satan. A third of the angels of heaven fell with Satan out of heaven, thought they could be greater than God. They can go with him, or they can go with God. So, you have that choice. And hopefully they'll make the right one. I mean, there are evil people. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that, but there are truly evil people on the earth, and they would much rather follow Satan and then go with the glory of God. They think that's trash. And so it's their choice. But this whole thing changed me so dramatically, and that's another reason that this could not be phony. My testimony is that I grew up angry and bitter, and got angrier and bitter, more bitter, and was an atheist and nasty to people, and I was horrible. And I changed from that to I think I'm a pretty nice person now, but I love people. I speak, and I'm very involved with moms that have lost children, and how we can become happy, and how we can live our lives through grief, and my life is devoted to that, and has been for over 50 years. I've never stopped. Never once for a second have I doubted what happened to me, and what my purpose on earth here is. And that's another thing. I believe we all have a purpose, and not everybody has to start a business or become a millionaire, or do any of this stuff. But you do have a purpose, whether it's just to glorify your creator, or to be who you are, be the husband, be the wife, be the kid, be whatever. You have something. You have a special gift. Everybody does.
I agree with you, and on all counts. And the question I like to ask everyone, and just whatever comes to your mind, is what do you want people to know?
That they're loved, that they're loved beyond anything they can imagine. And it's hard to explain, because so many people have this just, I don't know how to explain it, but they hurt so bad, and they feel they're worthless, and they feel suicide maybe is the only answer. I tried to commit suicide 3 times after Mark died, and well, once before that. And the only reason I didn't was because I had a vision of my son Chris coming out. I was on the third floor of a hotel building out on a ledge, sitting on the ledge and just kind of inching closer and closer. And I could see down below all the people. And I thought, one more inch, one more inch. It's all over. All this pain, all this stuff's going to be over. And my husband, Don, at the time was down in the bar with this girl that had been flirting with him all night. And just, I thought I was a good looking guy. So he drew women a lot. And that was like, I'd gone up to the room because of that and was crying, and I'm sitting on this ledge and one more inch, one more inch. And I had this vision of my son, Chris, come straight at me. Mommy, don't. And I fell back into the room, and, so yeah, I changed a lot. I've changed so much, and I'm happy. I'm happy.
That makes me so happy. You are such a beautiful person, and
Thank you.
it just warms my heart. You've been through so much, but you are proof that you can move through these difficult challenges and this pain and come out relatively healed, and if
Mhm.
nothing else, like you said, you have a purpose in helping other people because you have this
Yeah.
compassion, this depth of compassion that a friend of mine, the one I was talking with, said, I feel like I wasted my 20s and my 30s, and I should have
Oh,
done this. And I said, there's no should haves. I said, yeah,
yeah.
I shouldn't have been a sex and love addict. I shouldn't have, used drugs. I shouldn't have. I said, but then I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't be so
Right.
grateful, right? Like I wouldn't be doing this work.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have found my way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's all part of our journey. We can sit here and say, well,
Mhm.
I wish that didn't happen to me. And yeah, I wish that people didn't ever have to be hurt. I wish that children were always loved and always
Yeah.
nurtured and nobody ever hurt them. Um, but since it happens, it's good to know that there's some hope,
Right.
that
There
there's,
is hope.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can start a new, like there are new beginnings, and it doesn't mean you forget what happened. It just means that you learn to move forward with as much grace as you can, and hopefully inspire other people with your
Yeah.
own success story.
Yeah, life is tough. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, and I struggle, just like I'm a human being, and I still
Yeah.
struggle. I have daily things, and I even see a swear word now and then because I don't like this.
Yeah.
But but I do understand the depth of pain people have,
Yeah.
and even if that's what someone's purpose might be, is just to be there for fellow human beings, to be that light somewhere. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kat Dunkle, for being here. I
Shannon,
rec
thank you.
My absolute pleasure. It's so lovely to have met you, and I definitely recommend your book. I
Thank
will have links below where you can find Kat, you can read her book. And I just wish you all the best and
you.
look forward to seeing what else you accomplish in this beautiful life of yours.
Great, thank you, Shannon, thank you, appreciate it.